Happy holidays. Want to give your host a gift? Consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show this holiday season. It really helps the show grow. From all of us at Believe, have a Merry Christmas, everyone, and a Happy Holiday.
And what's going on, Los Angeles, Bruin Nation, LAFB fam? How we doing? Your dynamic duo, the Thriller and Madman, back together again for all of your UCLA basketball needs. And what a fun one we got as the Bruins start 2-0 in BIG play. But a lot to discuss and unpack with those two games. But first and foremost, my brother from another mother. We just had a great episode talking about Chesney. Thriller. Figured we'd keep the train moving. I know I asked you this like 30 minutes ago, but how the heck are you? And excited to talk about the hardwood.
Doing great, man. I look like a detective in the Florida Keys right now. So yes. I got this shirt going, but really excited about what's going on with the program. Got some questions, I think, like the fan base does. But overall, how can you complain about a 2-0 start, especially in Big Ten play, which is a very tough basketball conference at the top of it?
Can't complain, Thriller, indeed. You know, two very interesting games here for UCLA. Starting conference at Washington, you know, kind of an interesting program there, and then followed it up home for Oregon. So two programs that have historically been very good, particularly in the Pac-12. Interesting kind of years. I think transition years a bit for both. But we'll start with that Washington game, Thriller. Bruins prevail 82-80, but a lot to unpack there. You know, UCLA really, I think, imposed their will in that game for the most part. And then things got very, very dicey. It was 76-62 UCLA, up 14 with 4.5 minutes to go. And it felt like the team just kind of stopped. And Washington comes all the way back, actually had a shot to win it at the end with the 3-ball at the buzzer. It was not to be. Bruins hang on 82-80, but we walk out of that game with perhaps more questions than answers. Sky Clark was the savior in that game, Thriller. 25 big points on 7-9 shooting, including 6 for 7 from three-point line. His three-point shooting and his scorching ability there was probably the single greatest factor that enabled a UCLA victory. Tyler Bilodeau had 21 in that game on 7 of 14. And then Donovan Dent got out of his mini slump, I would say, a bit, going for 17 points on 6 of 13 shooting. But outside of those three guys, really had very little production the rest of the way. And the big storyline after that game, of course, was Eric Daly Jr. kind of going for the goose egg there. And so, you know, a lot was made of that. And so a lot of questions going into the Oregon game. Get Oregon at home. They've had kind of an up and down start to the season, but looked a lot more like a Cronin team against Oregon. Thriller kind of got out early, more of sort of a comfortable victory, felt a little bit more wire to wire. And I think the big thing that was notable in this Oregon victory, 5 guys, all 5 starters in double figures, was a much more balanced approach. I think the ball moved more smoothly and more seamlessly, held Oregon to the low 60s. It just felt more like a Cronin-type basketball game with great defense, really good intensity for 40 minutes, and balanced offense. And so we get out of this stretch here, Thriller, now 2-0. Mini break. We got a week off to sort of reassess, and then we got that big one next Saturday night against Gonzaga in Seattle. I think that's going to be a real nice measuring stick game for us. We had that Arizona game, into a dome. I think this Gonzaga game is going to be another really nice measuring stick game. Gonzaga, I think, is an upper echelon team. What a wild kind of few days and weeks Gonzaga has had. Literally got their doors blown off against Michigan and then come back and really dominate Kentucky, kind of sending Big Blue Nation with alarm bells. So I think that's going to be a really nice barometer to see where we're at. But Thriller, your initial impressions of this 2-0 week in Big Ten play?
Yeah, I've got a lot of good thoughts coming out of these and some questions as well. You know, when it comes to, what I do like, Tyler Bilodeau being back is just so big. When he missed that Cal game which we lost. I feel like we win that with Bilodeau. And, Sky Clark is an absolute flamethrower on the floor. I think we agree that Daly is maybe the most important player for this roster moving forward. But if I need one bucket, I think I'm going right to Bilodeau because he can score at all different levels. He's got that 6'9", 6'10" frame. He's got such feathery touch on that too. So Bilodeau just coming in and doing what he does, just a bucket getter, was so big for us coming back. I mean, big, second half against Washington. I think he scored 16 in the second half against the Huskies in that game. It was a very effective night for him. Sky Clark has been awesome, man. He's shooting 51% from three this season. He has been fantastic. So I've been very, very encouraged about his game. Was it like I was concerned in the moment about the Daly just, 0-point game, but I don't know if you read that Ben Bolch article about him talking to Daly. It was awesome. He's got some cool work ethic. So he got home at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Went right to the gym, shot for 90 minutes, literally went to sleep in the locker room, got about like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, woke up again, got another 90 minutes of shooting, then went and slept in his bed. And you saw the results in the Oregon game, man. I'm not worried about Daly knowing how hard he works now. So I'm very encouraged by that. I think he's the most vocal player on the team, all of that. Chris Johnson brought up a really good point on X too. Jamerson needs to be inserted more, specifically for rebounding needs. He made that very clutch offensive rebound, which he dumped back to Bilodeau in the Huskies game, which kind of gave us just enough of an advantage to kind of hold on there at the end, which I really enjoyed. Donovan Dent, he was okay against Oregon. At 16-8 against Washington, I think was encouraging. He's trying to find his way back. I know that hamstring has been bothersome, and you talk to any athlete about their hamstring, it is like an injury that you just kind of have to go all the way through with it. It's a really tough injury to kind of bounce back from. But I will say, 2-0 in Big Ten play, I'm encouraged by that. I am worried about this team's ability to close games, though. They make it way too close down the stretch for a team that I think has so many different buckets in different ways. We talked about Bilodeau, we talked about Daly, we talked about Sky Clark. I mean, our guy Trent Perry just got back against Oregon, so I'm expecting more buckets from him. They make it much more close than they need to be. And I know you had these questions against Arizona when we blew that lead late in the game. And, I was kind of like, it's Arizona. They're really good. Let's see how it goes. Consider me worried about this ability to close games down the stretch. I mean, I don't think you can turn off a UCLA game this year, given how it's going thus far. And hopefully we can kind of find some strength in all these scenarios where we can pull it out and maybe gain some confidence when it gets a little tight out there. But what do you think about that? Because I think, got close against the Ducks. It got very, very close against Washington. We got bailed out by a Sky Clark, 3-point foul that a lot of people didn't believe was like a foul in the first place. It was just a tough set of circumstances. So I'm a little worried about how we close these ball games, Madman.
Yeah, Thriller. I mean, it's a really good question. It feels like a Jekyll and Hyde type of storyline, right? Like if you were a lawyer right now and you had to defend UCLA basketball or interrogate UCLA basketball, you're like, hey, I have enough here to do either, as sort of a lawyer. Because on the one side, you're saying, look, 7-2, 2-0 in the Big Ten. You're going to be ranked back in the top 25 this week. Look, if you really break down the two losses, 4-point loss to your point, super close, down to the wire against Arizona. Possibly Arizona's the best team in the country. If you told me Arizona was the best team in the country, I'm not going to argue it. They're right there as the top team. And then you got into sort of a weird track meet with Cal up in the Bay Area. They were really hyped up. You didn't have Bilodeau. You got sort of baited into playing their style, and you didn't have, no Bilodeau. Dent was obviously compromised. You got kind of baited and sucker punched in that game. But law of averages long-term is going to play out. That's a little bit more of an anomaly. So that's sort of the pro. But you're saying, look, now you finally have a true center in Booker with Bilodeau. Daly's back, and you got Sky Clark back to his natural position of the two. I think last year Sky Clark played out of position as that lead guard. Now he gets to just be that two guard. And to your point, Thriller, you're seeing that three-point efficiency go through the roof as a result of that. And once Dent gets healthy, you got a very dynamic lead guard. You can go as far as you need to. Perry's off the bench. You got to play Jamerson more. You got Jamar Brown. You got a really, really nice 8-man rotation. and UCLA basketball is going to be fine and make a serious run and be a serious threat into weeks 2 and 3 of the NCAA tournament. On the flip side, you say, well, okay, but you're 7-2, 2-0, super light schedule to start. You blew that Arizona game. You should have won. You should have beaten Arizona, and you only score, 8 points over the last 7.5 minutes of this game, exactly looking like the Cronin teams of the last couple of years. And then you follow that up. You're lucky to beat a very mediocre Washington team. And then, you play another mediocre Oregon team at home. So you're 7-2. And then, oh, by the way, you didn't really have the mental toughness to go up and beat Cal. So you're 7-2, but it's a super light schedule. The one big game you played, you kind of blew. And so I think as a result of that, you can sort of argue it either way, which is why I think this Gonzaga game is so big. Because I think the Gonzaga game is going to tell us which narrative is the more accurate narrative, particularly for December and early January. Because if you can win that Gonzaga game, Thriller, and sort of perhaps right the wrongs of some of the things that you saw in that Arizona game. Now, granted, Arizona's not as good as Gonzaga. Gonzaga's not as good as Arizona, excuse me. But, I mean, who is as good as Arizona right now? If you win that game, you get to 8-2, you have a marquee win, you're starting to feel better about what happened against Arizona, and you're starting to feel better that, look, the Cal game was an anomaly. If you lose the Gonzaga game, and particularly if you lose the Gonzaga game, perhaps losing a lead in the second half, and you fall to 7-3, now you're saying, look, every sort of legitimate game, first 10 games, we either lost or we blew a lead. So I think given the limited number of samples here, Thriller, I think that Gonzaga game now becomes paramount in terms of what this team looks like. And so I'm really excited with a week off, full week off, what this team looks like against Gonzaga. And just to sort of double click on your earlier point, man, wasn't that Eric Daly Jr. story amazing, right? I mean, him sort of sleeping at the Mo Austin Basketball Center, just completely dissatisfied with his performance. Truly that emotional, spiritual heartbeat, that leader of this particular basketball team. And just, his preparation showed he's going to have to be massive against Gonzaga, as is Bilodeau, as is Dent, as is this entire starting five. But to me, Thriller, to really kind of double click on your question, now this Gonzaga game becomes paramount because you can argue it either way.
Yeah, it's such a big game. And I think they need that signature win to really position themselves when it comes tournament time, maybe with a high seed. So this is a huge out-of-conference affair. I'm looking at Xavier Booker, and I love what he has done shooting the basketball. You can see he has a lot more confidence offensively than what he had at Michigan State the previous 2 years. 6'11", former McDonald's All-American. We knew this. Very switchable defensively. I like all the ability there. I'm challenging him to get some rebounds, though. He's got about 5 rebounds a game this year. And he's 6'11". He's the tallest guy on the floor. He's the biggest guy on the floor. And I know a lot of these kids nowadays, they see the Golden State Warriors effect. Let's go back to the three-point line. Let's start chucking threes and just make it positionless basketball. You know what always wins is great rebounding basketball teams at the college level. So, Booker, you're the tallest, most athletic guy on the floor. You got to give me more than 5 rebounds a contest. I'm sorry. You got to give me more than that. So I'm hoping for big things from Booker. And, I think when it comes to the Gonzaga game, give me your key player. I'm interested to see who needs to elevate for us in order for us to walk away with our biggest out-of-conference game outside of Arizona this year.
Yeah, Thriller, it's a really good question. I mean, I think we need to see Dent be Dent. I mean, I think at kind of $3 million a year, and, there's some questions right now about this guy was the number 1 player in the transfer portal. And I think his talent is undeniable. I've said the best version of him is the best lead guard UCLA's had since Lonzo.
Yeah.
But we need to see it all come together. Because even, Thriller, if you recall, in that Arizona game, he struggled with, his ability to finish around the rim. And I think the big question right now is, what's his level of health? But he's got to be able to sort of finish around the rim. He's missing a lot of shots. His efficiency is way down. His ability to get to the rim is sort of undeniable. That first step, his quickness, it's all there. His court vision, getting others involved. But is Donovan Dent going to be able to kind of put a complete game together? Is he going to be able to put a 2010 game kind of together? Like a 2010 type of game to really control it, be able to get to the rim at will and finish, be able to sort of then break a defense down, kick it out for open shots, and really be able to control the game. I think we're looking for kind of that signature Donovan Dent game. I think you know what you're going to get from Bilodeau. Bilodeau is such a great sort of post player. He knows how to sort of get open kind of in a phone booth. If basketball was played in a phone booth, Bilodeau has just that craftiness to be able to find a shot for himself. He doesn't really need a lot of plays necessarily run for him. You can just post him high post, and he can get to work. Sky Clark is going to sort of play off a transition. Daly's also going to sort of play off of his movement and his hustle. And then you got that high pick and roll with Booker, right? I mean, it was there against Arizona early. He got a little bit cold, but then you can sort of rim run with him. But it's all predicated, to me, on Dent's ability to sort of control this game. We're still waiting for that signature game, Thriller. So for me, it's all about Donovan Dent bringing this one home against Gonzaga. And one thing I'll say on the previous point, as a pro for UCLA, if you're sort of in the pro argument, think about what that comeback that Washington had against UCLA did for Washington. Think about what Washington did the following game, goes to the Galen Center against SC, had become ranked in number 24 after winning at Maui. Washington down 18. They come all the way back, beat SC in Galen Center because of the confidence that they had of what they did against UCLA. So sometimes we can say, look, they blew the lead, but the flip side, the positive is they had the mental fortitude and the resilience to finish the job on the road, where that team came all the way back the very next game on the road. So again, it sort of depends on how you slice it, why that Gonzaga game to me is so critical. And to me, it's a Donovan Dent moment early in this season.
100%, man. And Dent, the opening night game that I saw him play, he was so explosive and fast. And he's been, he's quick right now, but he hasn't been his full self since that hamstring got hurt. So if we can get a week off, let Donovan be Donovan when he comes back out there, I think that's huge. I think my biggest player is the heartbeat of this team, as you said earlier. I think it's Eric Daly. Because you look at what he's going to have to do on a two-way landscape here. We're going to need him. We cannot play like he played against Washington in this big of a game against Gonzaga. We're going to need double-figure scoring from him. And then you ask yourself, who are the two best players on Gonzaga? It's Ike and Huff, who are two forwards, similar size to Daly. So he's going to have the biggest task of, right up there with Dent, where it's like, not only does Dent have to score, he's got to facilitate. With Daly, it's not only is he going to have to get some buckets for us, he's going to have to guard arguably their best offensive player as well. So that's going to be the matchups that I'm really looking for. If Daly and Dent come through in a big way, I definitely see UCLA pulling this out. Are you with me? Do you think UCLA has got a shot to get back on the good foot, get to 8-2 against the Gonzaga Bulldogs, a team that has haunted us in the NCAA tournament? And may I add, before you and I went to the basketball game last year, we ended the streak for the Bruin fans.
You, me, and Norman Powell, baby. We ended the streak. Thriller, I do. I really believe it, because I'm so high on this team in terms of roster construction and them being able to put it together. I think the biggest thing for me, Thriller, you said it best, being able to limit those two forwards. That's where Gonzaga was able to kind of get back in the game last year. If you recall, UCLA again had the big lead. Gonzaga found their way back because of great forward play and post play. Because I think sometimes what happens, Thriller, and we've seen this, whether it was Gonzaga last year, whether it was that North Carolina game, whether it's against some of these more athletic teams, Bilodeau struggles a little bit with those explosive forwards, whether you're talking about those power fours or you're talking about a stretch four. Sometimes, for as great as Bilodeau is offensively, there are times where he is limited defensively from an athleticism perspective, which is why, to your point, Daly has to play an even bigger role on both sides of the ball. But Thriller, given it's a week off, and given that Cronin is going to have an opportunity to really get in these guys' ear for a week, and I think more importantly, it's a full week where potentially Donovan Dent can get completely healthy. And this could be a real reset opportunity for him right before the Big Ten season starts. So I'm going to take UCLA. Bruins get it done, essentially on the road against the Gonzaga Bulldogs, get to 8-0, get back in the top 20, in the AP poll just in time for the meat of the Big Ten season, with all eyes on the likes of Purdue, on the likes of Michigan, on the likes of Michigan State. And oh, by the way, Purdue got their doors blown off at home against Iowa State this weekend. So if you can get this game and have the requisite momentum, you can look at all these teams in the eye and say, hey, we're coming for all of you in the Big Ten. Your thoughts, Thriller?
Oh, I love it, man. Yeah, I'm picking the Bruins as well. I think we need this win out of conference, especially, I mean, Michigan looks like the Terminator out there now as a basketball team. They are blowing teams out. So if we can get by Gonzaga, it'll give us that momentum where we can look, the top dogs in the eye and give them a run for their money within conference play.
No question about it, Thriller. Well, fans, it's going to be a fun week. We got a lot to cover. There's some stuff going on the football team, if you haven't heard, and we're going to have all the updates for you. Dense health, where this team is as they lead into Gonzaga. And oh, by the way, before we get out of here, huge congratulations to the UCLA men's water polo team.
What a win.
Beating SC at the buzzer, Thriller, 11-10, bringing home national championship number 125 for this great program. Another natty for our beloved Bruins. And before we get out of here, 2 requests, folks. One is hit that like and subscribe button. Thriller and I care so deeply about this community. We want to grow this channel. We want to continue to provide exceptional coverage to the best of our ability on all things UCLA. We love this place so much for years and years to come. It would mean the world to us if you hit that like and subscribe button and tell your friends about it as well to do the same. And second, we do have to pay the bills around here. Download that #1 sports app on the market today, that Sleeper app. Real-time stats, real-time engagement, immersive everything, all-encompassing capability. Tell them the guys from the LAFB network sent you. Use that promo code UCLA LAFB. Get $100 off on your match bonus. You put in 100, you get 100 for free. 100 becomes 200. You can do all kinds of things, over-unders, different spreads. Get really, really clever with it. Download the #1 sports app on the market today, the Sleeper app, and tell them the guys from the LAFB network sent you. For the great Will the Thrill Decker, I am Jamal the Madman Madney, and like we always say around these parts, be loud, be proud, be passionate, Bruins. 4's up forever, baby.
Happy holidays. Want to give your host a gift? Consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show this holiday season. It really helps the show grow. From all of us at Believe, have a Merry Christmas, everyone, and a happy holiday. If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.